All right, folks, let's talk some more about the Democrats and their non-response to the DOGE cuts that are coming down the pike. So here is Chuck Schumer. What a fighter. What a fighter. Chuck Schumer says, everyone knows there's waste in government. That should be cut. All right, so here we go.
It's simple. Everyone knows there's waste in government and should be cut, but DOGE is using a meat axe, and they're cutting things that are efficient and effective. I was in Albany and Syracuse on Monday talking at community health centers. Many of them have had their funds cut temporarily. Some even hasn't been restored yet. And they're the most efficient healthcare providers around. Take AID. Maybe there's some programs they don't like, but most people agree that PEPFAR was extremely effective and cost effective. Most people would want to see us continue our fight in Central Africa against Ebola so it doesn't come here. And so the bottom line is very simple, okay? If you want to make cuts, then you do it through a debate in Congress, not lawlessly by just implementing it.
All right, there's the Senate leader.
And the problem, as we've said many times, is you can't. You can't. Yes, what they are doing is undoubtedly illegal in many areas, in many ways. But the idea that you would go to Congress and you would get this solved through democratic means, it's ridiculous. There's no way that would happen. That's why people are supporting this.
Of course. So that's the Senate leader. Now let's talk a little bit more about Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. So this was a piece that came out in the New York Times a few days ago. I'm getting more and more furious. Chuck Schumer is changing directions, says the New York Times. I asked Chuck Schumer what Americans want from Democrats right now. They want us to beat Trump and stop this shit, he told me, and that's what we're doing. It was a welcome sign of life. For 3 weeks now, President Trump and the world's richest man have ransacked from within a democracy that took 250 years to build. The country faces a second crisis, an opposition party that doesn't seem to know how to respond. With no obvious party standard bearer, the job of leading Washington Democrats in the second Trump era has fallen largely to Mr. Schumer and Representative Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leaders of the Senate and House. It's been a rocky start. Mr. Schumer and Mr. Jeffries are seasoned deal makers, but in the minority and facing a president bent on laying waste to the very meaning of the U.S. Congress, both men have struggled to shed the familiar rhythms of business as usual. On Monday, they sent letters to congressional Democrats about using litigation and oversight inquiries to fight Mr. Trump's agenda. There was some substance, but it's hard to convey that America is in peril through a letter. Last week, they talked up a bill from House Democrats aimed at barring Elon Musk from having access to the Treasury Department's payment system, even though it was clear, at least to state attorneys general who have sued, that Mr. Musk's access violated the Constitution as well as existing laws, including the Privacy Act of 1974. At times, Mr. Jeffries has sounded like someone who has given up. What leverage do we have? He told reporters at his weekly news conference on Friday. They control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. It's their government. Here is the video of that moment.
Figure out what leverage we actually have. What leverage do we have? They control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. It's their government. What leverage do we have?
So
very inspiring.
Yeah, very inspiring. They act as if the only way to wield power is to work within the institutions. You know, when we were doing the post-duopoly show, Nick made a great point. He says Democrats don't defend people; they only defend institutions. Right? That's why a lot of the protest about this has been, you know, in support of USAID, or now I'm sure they'll have some, protesting in support of the NED, since that's next on the chopping block. But they don't actually run to people. The answer is to expose the negative impacts that these cuts have on ordinary people. You do not defend the institutions, you defend the people who at the time appear to be collateral damage because the media is putting all the focus on USAID. But really, it's ordinary people that are going to bear most of the brunt of these cuts. Now, Chuck Schumer mentioned that he was in a community health center. So local media did cover this. Schumer calls for answers as community health centers face uncertainty. So this is from a local station. U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer is criticizing the impact of President Donald Trump's funding freeze and the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency as community health centers look for answers. Schumer visited Syracuse's community health center on Monday to call for an explanation from the Department of Health and Human Services. Hello, this is the Department of Health and Human Services. How may I help you? As of today. He said the fallout from the Trump administration's funding freeze.
Did he get confirmed?
He did, just about a half hour before he went live. Yep.
I didn't see
He said the fallout from the Trump administration's funding freeze has caused mass confusion for small healthcare centers, which have been left with funding delays and shuttered portals. We need answers as to what happened, Schumer said. Why were these funds cut off? I don't know. I don't think there's an explanation other than helping the billionaires with their tax cuts, but why were they shut off? Why can't I read today? Schumer's concern turns to the expiration of the Community Healthcare Center's main federal funding program next month. He placed blame on Musk for tanking a bipartisan spending agreement last year. We need a commitment from everybody, Democrats and Republicans, not to listen to DOGE, not to listen to Elon Musk, but to fully fund our healthcare centers by March 14th, Schumer said. Also, in Virginia, community health centers close over federal funding access. Here's a video that Russ put me onto here. So this is a veteran who is, for some crazy reason, not allowed to volunteer at the VA hospital now because of these cuts.
This probably isn't going to matter to most Americans, but it absolutely applies to my fellow veterans. I just found out a few minutes ago from a buddy that due to President Musk's hiring freeze on January 20th, we are no longer permitted to volunteer with the VA. They've shut down not only the paid appointments as they have across the entire government, but they've shut down what they call without compensation appointments, which is the volunteer work. So if you were planning on volunteering for the VA this year, can't do it. It's against the law now. So there you have it.
All right. Now, here is a farmer who has gone kind of viral here. I won't read the snarky text of this tweet since I don't think the right approach is to mock these people, but rather
they're dying to do.
Use this, right, as a teachable moment. So let's take a look at this guy who was knee-deep into a farmer's contract with the federal government only to get stiffed when they refuse to pay out what he needs to complete his work.
I might lose my farm because of the government. I got in bed with the government. I was promoting getting in bed with the government because I thought it was a good idea. So, NRCS, conservation planning. So they had a program out there called the EQIP program. And what the EQIP program is it's cost sharing on stuff like fencing, different seedings, water lines, waters, wells, and stuff like that to better conserve farmland for agricultural use. So I thought it was a great program. We got a contract with them for $240,000. So we signed a contract with them for $240,000, and we have bought different types of material. We've gotten paid out on some of it, but I now have $80,000 worth of material and signed contracts for labor that are going to install the water lines in the upcoming few weeks and months. And with that being said, they called me today and said, hey, I know we have this signed contract. We're reneging on it. We're not going to pay out on it. What do you mean you're not going to pay out on it? So I've got all this stuff bought, and whenever I install it, you're not going to pay out. We had this contract. I made business decisions based on this contract. So now I have $80,000 out of my pocket that I didn't have to spend. So the $80,000 that we have is supposed to go to our farm loan in the fall. If we don't have that money, that's our hay money, that's our farm money, our farm payment money. If we don't have that money, we will lose this farm. And the only way that I can think to get around it is we sell some cows. And if I sell cows now to make the payment, to make that payment, I'm not going to be able to make the payment in the fall because the cows are calculated in my payment in the fall. So because I got in bed with the government, I spent money based on the contract that we signed. They're reneging on it. I'm just screwed. And unless they lift this pause on payment, I'm going to lose this farm. So they have told me that the best thing that they can tell me is get in touch with the congressmen and congresswomen and see if I can get something done about this. So I've reached out to Ann Wagner's office. That's the congresswoman of Missouri. I'm hoping that something comes out of that, but I don't have very high hopes of it. Hopefully this is a temporary ban on payment of that, but I don't understand how you can sign a contract and then just renege on that contract. I do not understand that at all. And if something doesn't change, we are going to lose this farm, and I am extremely stressed about it.
Don't blame you, sir. In fact, his story went so viral that CNN picked up this video and they asked Congressman Jason Smith about him and stories and cases like him.
Is it's a signed contract, it's a legally binding contract. They're not backing out on it. They're not paying out on it. So it puts me in a bind because I've made business decisions based on that contract.
What do you say to Skylar Holden and people in that predicament?
What I would say is Congress, that the government needs to do a better job at working for the American people. Too often, it seems like the American people's working for the government, and the whole purpose of freezing and putting a hold on everything right now is to review to make sure it's working the way that Congress and the executive is supposed to implement. It's unfortunate that this is the case. I've been talking with several farmers that have been experiencing this and trying to help guide them through this process. But it's all going to work out. Right now, it's a little bit disruptive, but that's what this administration promised whenever they were coming to Washington,
so
is that they would be disruptive and look at ways to make the government more efficient and working for the people.
Yeah, no, they promised this. This was a real staple of the campaign, that they were going to screw over farmers midway through hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of contracts, that they were going to make it difficult for veterans to volunteer at their VA hospitals, that they were going to shutter and or slow down and grind to a halt community health centers. Yeah, this is absolutely what they ran on. This is what the American people voted for. See, this is how you exercise leverage when you're in the minority. So to Hakeem Jeffries, once again here,
Figure out what leverage we actually have.
what leverage you actually have are the people who are being hurt by the policy. And in this case, it's not a policy. It is a coup. It is a takeover of the government by oligarchic tech bro billionaires. The people who are hurt by that, they are your leverage. So you do not have the numbers now in Congress to stop this from happening, but you do have the power to make them pay a price for doing it. That's what politics is. According to this logic, well, when not enough people voted for us, so I guess we just can't do anything. And maybe people will vote for us next time. I mean, that is completely impotent. It is impotent and weak on purpose. That is how useless these people are. You point to the pain that this is causing ordinary people and that it will continue to cause exponentially. They are going to come for, mark my words, your Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, disability payments. They've already come at these farmers canceling their contracts. You know who hasn't had their contracts fucked with by the government? Elon Musk. State Department plans
I was almost going to cover that today.
Yes. State Department plans $400 million purchase of armored Tesla cyber trucks. So he's not getting his money fucked with. They're not reneging on those contracts.
And just a footnote on that, after Drop Site News, they broke that story. It said Tesla on the spreadsheet on the website.
Right.
They changed it to armored vehicles. They took Tesla out of the spreadsheet.
Oh, wow.
There's your transparency for you.
There's your transparency. Exactly. So that's your leverage. You see what I'm doing? You can make that case. There are how many hundreds of you in Congress, in the Senate? Every single Democrat at every elected level, from Congress to the Senate, to the governor's houses, to the state assembly's houses, you need to go out and find people in your district, like some of the people who we just featured, and you need to go and you need to have rallies and organizing sessions with them every week and get these stories into the media every single week, as often as you possibly can. If hundreds of people do that over and over and over again, you will start to see you have a little bit more leverage. This congressman here, he says, this isn't the only person he's hearing this from. He's hearing this from multiple farmers who are like, wait a minute, where's our money? Right? So that's your leverage. That's your leverage. But Democrats do not think this way. They only think in terms of how can we manipulate the institutions from the inside to tweak outcomes that we want. They have no grasp of mass politics. They have no concept of rallying the public. That whole approach to politics has been systematically uninstalled from the Democratic Party mindset over the course of really the past almost 100 years. I mean, you think FDR would have handled this the way Hakeem Jeffries? Oh, I don't have the votes, so I guess, what can we do? What can we do? We're in the minority. Yes, you don't have enough votes right now. You know how you go out and gain votes? You go out and prosecute the case against the opposition.
Right.
Dumbass. One to put a button on this, and Russ sent this to me because David Sirota has blocked the Due Dissidents account.
Has he?
Yeah. There's a strong argument.
What did you say to David Sirota?
We didn't say anything to him. We did that segment. We made fun of him a little bit. Maybe he got wind of it. Who knows?
Which one?
During a campaign about how you should vote for Democrats to disempower the Democratic establishment, right? Remember that?
Oh, right. You think
there's a strong argument
what a pussy.
Yeah. There's a strong argument that if we didn't really, we weren't nasty. We just, criticized at this point. Anyway.
That's what I'm saying. We never went hard at Sirota.
Anyway, sorry. So maybe somebody send this to him and he'll unblock me so I could read his stuff again. There's a strong argument that if every single Dem Party lifer in D.C., every politician, staffer, advocate, think tanker, media influencer, pundit, etc., just resigned, it would actually be better for party renewal and the world and would certainly not be worse than it is right now. An entire generation of the Democrats' professional political class has made a great living in the Capitol, absolutely failing to prevent, and in many cases actually facilitating, what we're now living through. It's time to just say that out loud and admit it. Well, it's been time. It's been time, but no lies detected. Go ahead.
Yeah. They do not even have the rhetoric of class and economic oriented politicking. They just don't. And the reason that people are cheering this on in the way that they are is that this is the oligarchic class emptying out the drawers of the corporatists and showing all the corruption, all their dirty underwear to the public. And of course, everybody's cheering it. They can think of no other response than to try to defend the corporatist institutions that are being exposed. You could not take a worse approach than to try to defend what's being exposed. What you need to say right now is, yes, that's terrible, but they're in no position to say that with any credibility because they're the ones who created that system. They are very much the heirs to that system. They are very much the supporters of that system. What a lot of people, I think, at this moment don't understand is that this is, Chris Hedges did an interview where he put this very well. He's very good at summing up these kinds of broad macro forces underlying these kinds of events. And he said, what you're seeing is the oligarch class taking over from the corporatists. Now, the corporatists like to have stability because they sell goods overseas. They want stable trade deals and relations with other countries because their wealth depends on that kind of stability. For these oligarchs, they want monopolistic enterprises where everybody becomes what Varoufakis calls a cloud serf, where everyone's paying a rent to them for services. They get rid of the post office. Now you pay a fee. You pay a monthly fee for postal services.
Hedges called that toll booth capitalism. Yeah.
Right. They don't need the kinds of agreements, the kind of stability, the kind of cooperation that the corporatists did. But the corporatists, in order to maintain their status quo, did a lot of things like U.S. aid, where you send in these psyops to control these countries to make sure nothing destabilizes that system. Now, these guys are coming in, destabilizing that system, showing you to some extent, not completely, how that system works and what the sins of the corporatists have been, and who's not going to cheer that on. Of course. I mean, I cheer it on. It's a lot of people who have been fighting organizations like USAID for a very long time, of course, are cheered to see that. Now, some are saying, some who are more conscious of what these people actually are saying, you know what? It's great that they're exposing all this and emptying it out. In the end, that's a net good, and we can fight them on the other things. Maybe. I think that's naive. I think it is good that they're emptying all this out. But I think you cannot aid and abet them by only focusing on that. You need to tell people why they're doing this and what they plan to replace it with, because you are not going to like it. You think that the old legacy media was bad, and it is. And it is. It was and it is. What do you think it's going to be like when these guys really have no competition for the flow of information and they're controlling people's minds, not only through articles on websites, but through social media that people are increasingly addicted to and plugged into all day? We're seeing the result already. I did a Social Security story the other day. Yesterday, when I was preparing for today's show, I saw Medicaid was trending on X. So I clicked into it. Every single one. They're not cutting Medicaid. They're only going after fraud in the system. Medicaid. That's fucking dangerous to a level that CNN never even dreamt of. You know, Nietzsche, a lot of these people are fond of, said, "Be careful in fighting monsters lest you become one." I think we are seeing with a lot of people, they fought the liberal class and all of its institutions for so long that they're embracing a takeover by oligarchs without realizing what they're signing off on.
Yes, yes, I think that is very, very well said. So well said. I really have nothing to add. The only thing I would say,
nailed it.
Yeah, nailed it, nailed it. Put it in the can, print it. Yeah, your leverage is always ordinary people. You find where this hurts ordinary people.
Well, this is
but they're not interested in ordinary people. They have no interest. Like, there's going to be so much opportunity. Wait till the woman who has a herniated disc because she was hit by a car 8 months ago gets a letter saying, no, you know what, we think you're ready to go back to work. So this $1,500 a month disability that you get that you're barely eking out on, that's done. That's gone. Get up off your ass and go back to work. Stop being a moocher. Stop bullshitting the government. Stop perpetrating fraud against the government, talking about your herniated disc. Fuck you. Fuck your herniated disc. Get back. Right. This is what's going to be happening hundreds of thousands of times over.
Sure.
This is what their plan is. Sure. So there's going to be plenty of cases. There's going to be plenty of people who you can go to who are in a very desperate situation because of these pieces of garbage who have decided to loot our treasury, loot our government under the guise of an anti-woke, anti-corruption crusade. There's going to be a lot of people on the receiving end of this who you could rally if you were interested in that. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party is completely unequipped with the understanding of how to even start that process.
Well, this is where this moment presents a lot of opportunity, but it's also a very dangerous and difficult moment. I don't think, and I'm sure people who are really into that history may argue with me, I don't know that the left has ever been as powerless and broken in America as it is at this moment, because you're talking about at every single level. Some people say, well, what about Eisenhower? Well, during Eisenhower, you had the beatniks. You had that whole scene that would explode into left energy just a few years later, right there under the surface. Right. On every level, the left is decimated. It has no art. And don't tell me about the obscure person you listen to on Bandcamp. That's not a movement, okay? You don't have art. You don't have cultural leverage. You don't have an intellectual movement with broad mass following and appeal. You have no political power. You don't have a clear message. You don't have clear objectives. You have a left that, frankly, has been completely devoured and hollowed out by what, at this point, I think were intelligence services-driven identity politics movements. You've got to rebuild from that. If you even want to start to talk about rebuilding the left based on economics, you're going to have to go through those people. You're gonna have, as soon as you, just like the person described at Occupy Wall Street, those people didn't go away. As soon as you say,
Right.
yeah, enough with the identity politics, you're going to get 20 blue hairs screaming about how you're an ist, you're a phobe. You got to
Right,
get
right.
the fuck rid of those people before you can do anything. Or anything you try to build, you're going to end up like the DNC chair race. You're going to end up right back in that place. It's going to be an enormous fucking waste of time. So you got to go through this whole purging of those movements from any legitimate left movement. And I don't know that you have a left that even remains that has the stomach for that, honestly. We'll see.
We will see.
Please clap.